Great. Okay, so
Hello.
I think we're all here now.
Welcome.
Seems to be no other issues. Everyone's okay video audio wise. Welcome, James.
Can you hear me okay?
Hi, James.
Yep, perfect. Right, thanks very much for coming, but I'm going to hand you over now to Chris now, who'll get things started. So best of luck and look forward to see how this goes.
Thank you.
I will. I'll try my best. Thanks, Keen. See you. Right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's gaming panel. A little bit about myself. I'm a computer science student at UCD.
Sorry.
James is back. I'm a computer science student at UCD, and I'm also a NetSoc committee member, so we host tech events through the year. I'm just going to plug that if anyone in UCD wants to come along and say hi, we're here. And I just want to thank everyone for coming today and consequently donating towards this year's charity partners, PA the House and the INAR. It means a great deal, a lot more than you might think. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for all our guests being here today. Very influential and successful people. And you're also from very distinct areas, I got to say. Like, it's not often that you'll find like a gaming panel with such like an non-esoteric, if you could say, scope. So that's really cool. We've got a software engineer, we've got a composer and conductor, we've got an indie game studio director, and we've got a 3D animator. So we're grabbing from all sorts. I'm real hyped. So 3 requests for the attendees. If you have any questions, please ask in the session chat, and we'll get to them at the end. And then drop your LinkedIns, because if you're going to get anything out of System, it's connections, so they're very important. I think my LinkedIn is in my account, so I don't know, try that, but I'll drop it at the end. And if anyone else has their linked LinkedIns, then you can go search for them. And then just enjoy yourself. I hope you enjoy this. Oh, okay. Tina's already on it. So I probably cannot do justice for the introduction of these guests. So I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves, why they're here, their current work, pronouns, and then one random fact. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you for one random fact about yourself. And I'm going to call on Tina first, since I already got the LinkedIn out, so I feel like you're already real prepared. I'm going to ask you first.
I'm good. How are you? Tina? Good. Excellent. Yeah, so I'm Tina, and I'm one of the directors at an indie studio here in Belfast called Bryn and Nairs. I fill a production role in our studio across all of our projects, and I have a team of about 10 game devs, and yeah, we have a lovely tiny wee studio and love it. One random fact about me, I took up cheerleading when I went back to university at 29 and still love it. Yep, well into my 30s and still cheerleading. It's great fun.
Yep. the best way to cheerlead. Up next we have Emer.
Hi, Chris.
How are you, Emer?
Hi everyone at NetSoc. Hi everyone out there. I had to say, when I was in college, I was kind of the Chris of the Music Society, you know, dragging everyone together to do mad projects like this one, which is fantastic, which is why I'm here. So
I'm honored to be compared.
Mad random fact. Which one do you want first? Was the first question as well? I'm
not. Just your current work. What do you do? And then you can throw the random fact.
That's a really good question. From day to day, it's kind of different. So I conduct a lot of music for films, TV and video games, and classical music and opera and hologram, mad stuff. And I composer as well, a music producer and a producer. So basically, pardon?
Very meta.
Very meta. I'm all over the place, in other words. I mean, diversified. So what am I doing at the moment? I'm composing. I can't quite tell you because I'm NDA'd a little bit. I'll tell you some of the titles I've worked on in the past. I worked with Blizzard Activision for about 10 to 12 years. I conducted the scores. We did a lot of work at Skywalker Ranch in San Francisco. I would have conducted the scores for for WoW, for Hearthstone, for Overwatch, for Heroes of the Storm, for StarCraft, Diablo, and I composed on World of Warcraft, and I was an orchestrator on World of Warcraft as well. A composer on World of Banner, and I worked a lot with Nintendo on their 25th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. We recorded an album that went out with Skyward Sword as part of that. We recorded the first 3D footage of an orchestra that went into 3DSs. I did a 70 concert tour for them after that, a bunch of recordings, an album called The Celtic Link. Lots of stuff, but I'm really
a good bit. Maybe not enough. I don't know. I don't think
I'm insulting people. I'm forgetting about, but I'm excited because there's 2 indie games, Irish indie games coming up that we're working on this year that I'm really happy about because I really love working with Irish creatives in particular. Yes, I'm biased, but there's a short we have that's important to note. We just scored an animated feature called 2x2 Overboard. And we have some really cool stuff coming up. Watch out for the St. Patrick's Festival. I can't say any more about it. There's an animated series coming up, and there's something really special in the video game world that's really quirky and different, and a first, a music history first that I can't tell you about yet, but it'll be special. Anyway, random fact. Almost always before I go on stage, I listen to Back in Black by AC/DC.
Okay. Live the ritual today?
Oh, did I do today? No, I just sort of got up, scrambled out of bed, made pancakes for my 7 and 2-year-old, and the next step of the day so far.
Okay. Awesome. Now, who will call on next? I think we'll call on James. How are you?
I'm James Heslin, pronouns he, him. I work for Demonware, which is an Activision studio for online games services. So I'm a web developer day-to-day working on tools that game studios and other internal Activision people use to manage their game and keep track of various online portions of it. So yeah, that's my that's a brief summary of my job.
Lovely. Random fact? Anything?
When I was 4, I sent my mum's Renault 4 backwards through a fence actually, from the top of our garden, on the top of our driveway. Undid the handbrake accidentally. Whole car went all the way back down quite a steep drive through a fence. It wasn't our fence.
That is exactly for in a random fact. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good.
Okay, and finally we have Hugh. How are you, Hugh?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, so I'm Hugh. I'm a 3D animator at Romero Games. We're based in Galway. There's about 30 of us in the studio. Oh yeah, Emer, you're in Galway, aren't you? Or you're from Galway, right? Yeah.
Tell John and Brenda I said hello.
I will, of course. There's about 30 of us in the studio. In and about 30, I think. I haven't counted in a while. I've been there for almost 3 years now. And we just shipped our first title called Empire of Sin. I have like a shrine towards it behind me, but I'm not going to show you. Yeah, so I've been working there for about 3 years as a 3D animator. God, I feel like my introduction's a lot shorter because that's about it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Random fact?
Oh, random fact is that I'm a fully qualified windsurfing instructor, and specifically through Irish. So that's like my random fact that I use everywhere.
That makes it. Okay. I'm going to start off by asking you all, it's only natural to start from the beginning. So where did you guys get your interest for each respective profession? Anyone can start. It doesn't matter. Who wants to jump on it first?
Yeah.
I wish nobody else would. I just was a total music nerd from as long as I was alive, basically. So anything that was exciting musically, and particular music that paints pictures or that makes you that's emotionally stimulating. That was the kind of music that drew me. So the orchestra in particular. I'll tell you very quickly. My very first credit was because, sorry guys, I went to the other side of the tracks. I was in the Buttery Bar in Trinity, and one of the fourth years, I was in first year, came in and said, "What are you guys doing tomorrow? I need some sight singers. I need people who can note bash and write some choral parts." So we all went. I think we got like €40 to do it or something. All went into the studio that no longer exists. Wrote some choral parts, sung on it. I'm not a great singer by any stretch. Then about 6 months later, my brother calls me up in a panic, and I was about 19 at the time, and he goes, "Did you work on Metal Gear?" I was like, "No." And he goes, "I'm looking at your credit on screen right now." I said, "Who else is in there?" And he named David Downs, who later went on to create Celtic Woman. David Downs, there's a few from Derry, there's a few from Dublin, a few from UCD, a few from Trinity. Remember my friend Simon Morgan from UCD was on it, a bunch of people like that. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that gang, okay." So my first game credit came from the college bar.
So you're just throwing it in then? No pressure there.
Not that I knew of at the time, but turned out that some Japanese composer. That's what I was told. Some Japanese composer.
Yeah, I suppose I'll go next then. My interest in animation came from my dad bringing me to the Young Scientist exhibition, if anyone remembers that. Well, I mean, not that it's stopped. I mean, I'm sure it's still going, but went as a kid, and one of the booths had, it basically just explained animation in the sense that you would stand in front of a camera and it would like take a sequence of photos of you. And I still have the flip book somewhere, and it's just me as a kid like bouncing around in front of the camera. And then they would print it off and like have it for you in a flip book. And then they were like, "Okay, so this is how TV film animation works." And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, "Yeah, the animators just draw every frame." And then I went on a big flipbook spree for about, I don't know, a full year, and then eventually convinced my dad to like download some software on his laptop. And then from there kind of just spiraled, and I was always playing games at the same time, so I knew that animators were always needed for games. And then eventually, yeah, I mean, I just kept going at it and here I am.
Do you want to go next?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I'd always had a crazy interest in games. I was playing games before I could even read, back on the Commodore, and it just sort of grew from there as I got older. But I never thought I would have a career in games. I went to an all-girls school whose idea of IT education was teaching me to be a good typist, and that was the grand sum of my IT education in school. So it wasn't a career that I thought would be open to me. I didn't think it like existed in my sphere or bubble. And then one of my very good friends was finishing his degree in computer science and moved in with me. I saw what he did with a terrain generation tool he created as part of his master's thesis and was like, I think that could be something. So we kind of combined a bit of like my management background with his programming know-how, and as crazy young kids went on Kickstarter, and we managed to get funded to make our first game, and it sort of just grew from there. And I skilled up very much on the job and still am. So yeah.
Cool. I had been playing games a lot, and all through my like young life and into kind of teenage years when I started getting more into like computer stuff, like Linux and stuff like that. And basically had all these like inflection points where I almost became like a bedroom game developer and didn't. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I used to play that old Gorillaz basic game, which a lot of people have said, oh, that was the game that I first like started changing stuff, but I didn't start changing stuff. I didn't realize you could do that. So I had all these times where I was nearly a game developer. But then I got this book when I was a teenager, and I was like, I'm going to do it. And I tried to become a game developer on my own, and it just didn't really work. So when I went to college, I aimed for that game development course in UL and made games there, and then did a small internship with a tiny long dead game studio in Limerick after my first year of college. And that was my first, that was quite a learn on the job situation as well. I learned to program Flash games for a summer, basically. Did that. And then after graduation, a lot of my friends had gone to Demonware for internships and stuff. So after a couple of years, I went up there too.
And that leads well into our next question, which is, considering most of us that like attendees are in college right now, where, in your opinion, should someone start off in your field? Like, where do we go to from our current position as college students? I'll call Hugh.
Yeah, so I won't answer this like just for animation. I guess I'll do like the art department of a studio. I'm the only animator in the studio, so I'm quite surrounded by all the other artists. And the path seems to be pretty self-taught for the most part. I mean, a lot of us will have degrees or something that's completely unrelated, but if you have enough passion and you just take online courses, like there's so much free resources out there, and for games, it's all about your portfolio. Like, I don't actually have a degree. I did 2 years of college and then a year of an online course, and then just went straight into the studio. I mean, like no one really looks at your CV. It's just portfolio. And like, in terms of if you're currently in college, the best thing you can be doing is, you know, how can I tie what I'm currently doing in college into, you know, if you did want to become an artist in a game studio, like how can I tie that into game development art or something along those lines? Or maybe just in your spare time, just creating art on the side and really just working on a portfolio, because like there's always, no matter what course you do, there's going to be something that relates to somehow, like you could be in a, you know, name a random degree, you could link the two and make yourself useful, you know what I mean? So in terms of art, I mean, it's all about portfolio, and not much else matters. But God, if you had like a degree in finance or something, like it shows that you were able to do, you know, work hard, you have the ethic for it. And if you have a good portfolio, then on top of that, I mean, they're both going to work to your advantage. So yeah, takeaway for art is just portfolio.
Yes.
Off that.
So I would really mirror that same sentiment. I do our studios recruiting, and a degree isn't a huge factor at all. We go portfolio first and CV second, like 99% of studios do. And so I really agree with you. I also didn't start my company with a degree. Like, it's not something that is a huge benefit in such a creative and quickly moving field. I think you want to show that you have that grit and that stick factor. So one of the most important things to me when I'm looking at portfolios and assessing candidates is seeing something that they've seen through from beginning to end. Seeing a project that they've completed looks really good. It doesn't have to be a big project, but it's really good when you can see a full project and they take the time not just to show you the pretty bits, but to show you where they learned, and they take the time to show you the really interesting decisions that they had to make along the way, because there's a lot of people who have very strong technical skills, but they don't have that vision to make those really interesting decisions and that autonomy, and that's really, really important in a studio. So if you can document your portfolio very well, it goes in tandem with a lot of those strong technical abilities that you're showing off. So that's a big tip that I would give.
That's amazing. Perfect. And then Emer, how about you?
Well, I've been thinking about this as you've been talking, because my own personal the direction was really, really all over the place. And if I could go back to myself after finishing my undergraduate music degree, I tell myself the easiest way into the industry, and a second way, which is the if you don't want to leave home for your postgraduate, because you really at this stage, if you want to write music for media, you do need to go the postgraduate route. Currently, probably the best programs in the world, and the ones that have the best internships, they plant you right in the middle of the big music departments, and with famous composers and all that. And gives you the best chance at a career. Are places like USC the University of Southern California, Berkeley in Boston, Columbia College Chicago. Those would be the three big ones. Berkeley has an outpost in Spain, but you don't get the same kind of opportunities with the internships. It's all about the internships and getting planted, and the skill set, because it's a major. The skill set is the old school composition, orchestration, harmony and counterpoint, and all that stuff, added to major technical music production skills. So if you don't want to leave home, there is a course that was at Pulse College that's coming back. There is a course. There's another university. I don't know. I think the Dundalk Institute of Technology is starting a course soon. Spoiler, I think Craig and I are going to help them a little bit, bring in some composer friends of ours from across the world who are the type of people that hire interns and bring them with them, which is what happened with me. I did UCLA had an outpost in Dublin for a few years, and I did 4 years part-time. I did their courses. So by the time I did it alongside my undergraduate degree. But the easiest way to get into the industry is to go to one of the major courses, and they're extremely expensive, the United States ones. I'm not sure that I would have been able to do it unless it was on a full scholarship. The other thing is, for anyone that's listening who's already done courses and who's already working on things, join the Game Audio Network Guild, GANG. That's really important. My colleague Tony Tellerico was one of the founders of that. They have things like a mentorship at the GDC, so you can win a scholarship to the GDC and have one of the major composers bring you around and introduce you to everybody. GDC also has things like demo derbies where they'll play your music and they'll have a panel comment on it and stuff like that. There are things that GANG does at PAX. There are things that GANG does at Gamescom. So that's a definite one. There are other things like the ASCAP workshop. They take about 12 people from across the world every year. I'm a graduate of that, as is Craig, my husband. The Sundance Institute also. Sundance Institute, the ASCAP workshop, and GANG are all free, and ASCAP spends at least 10,000–15,000 on each student. Similarly, Sundance Institute. So those are free ones versus expensive ones. You go to USC, you pay the money, and you get landed in the middle of the industry. I couldn't have gone personally. It's about 60 grand a year or something. But there you go. That's the path of today. Not following mine, which is a mess.
And then finally, James, how about you?
Been thinking about this too while the others were talking. I think it's although I went to a course that was called at the time was called Multimedia and Computer Games Development, and I think it is now just called Games Development if it's still around in UL. It was a lot more of a generalist course. We did a class where we learned some Blender, we did a class where we learned XNA, and we did various bits and pieces, but a lot of what we did was actually like how to become a pretty standard enterprise developer. So like with just some game stuff kind of sprinkled in, and that was fine. It was actually arguably a more employable course across other industries. And so right after it, I actually, not quite the college bar, but on the UL Computer Society Facebook page, someone posted, "Hey, I'd like to work with a developer for my PhD project. I just need a bit of HTTP, stuff like that." And I responded to that with a friend, and we actually ended up working for this guy for 2 years in an electricity company. And the skills that I learned there, it turns out not only, game developers don't only need game programmers. They need web developers a lot of the time. And they need accountants almost every time. They need all those sundry jobs. Like I'm just a tech worker in the games industry. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is worth thinking about. If you're already like 2/3 through a course and you're like, I love games, but my job or my skills don't exactly take me there. Like they still can, because game developers as a business, as an industry, still need people like me who like write websites, do bits and pieces on servers, deploy stuff. Like my job day to day doesn't touch a game, but it's very important to the games to have people like me and people like, the finance department and the, all those people. So I'd say don't lose hope if you're kind of feeling a bit, if you don't work on graphics every day in your college, because there's plenty of other stuff out there.
Cool. I'm going to throw you in the deep end a little bit. So hypothetical scenario, let's say you're at your job one day and you just get up and you decide I'm better than this. And you just walk out and you go and you make your own company. How would you go by doing it? What would be its focus? How would you fund it? And conversely, what would you not do? So I'm going to ask James again, just start off on that. Sure. Also, can you see Emer?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll fix that myself. So James, can you start us off?
Yeah, big question. Great. I think that if I was to go and start something for myself, it would be much more, it'd be sort of a small contracting business. Like, I don't think I would be looking to develop a product that I want to try and sell myself around the world type thing. It'd be a lot more like maybe selling some kind of service. Like you want a little thing that you can put on your website and you can upload games to it easily or something like that. If you're a HTML5 developer or something like that, some kind of a service that you can sell, and just like this will help you to do the important work of game development without having to like, oh, now I have to learn HTML or whatever. So that would be one thing. Or else like just doing less game focused, more technical stuff. Like I'll do a website for estate agent, or I'll do a website for an accountant or something like that. Because it's a lot easier to get like small bits of work, I think, than to try and go from 0 to 100 on a project while staying funded. And like then trying, like the games industry, especially for indies, I know some other indies in the room, it's not just because you worked on a game for a long time and you did a good job doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make money on the game. And that's what's really hard about it. So I would definitely lean away from making my own game as a money maker, to be honest, if I had to do it for myself.
Tina, I heard you have a little bit of experience in this yourself. You want to give us a
brief... So yeah, that's basically been my life for the last 8 years. So yeah. Well, I'll tell you a bit about like how we did it and what we did. So we were very naive when we came into it. I basically looked at a terrain generation tool that my best friend had made and was like, yeah, we could make something with that. Mm-hmm. Well done, Tina. That wasn't very clever, but we made a lot of mistakes on the way. We ran 2 successful Kickstarters, one for the game and one for like a standalone ship designer. which presented most of the budget for the game. We were helped out considerably by Northern Ireland Screen, because any funding that you manage to get, they find ways to maximise it and extend that budget. Which is fantastic. Like, we wouldn't have succeeded in any of our game projects without them. And it took us about 6 to 7 years to complete that game. It was in our own custom engine, and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. But it taught us so much for these next projects that we're working on now, that those are just working so much smoother. So we're working on 2 games now that have good commercial potential, to the point where they've been able to get some European funding and things like that. So our main game project is Hortelius, and it is a strongly narrative game that got Creative Europe funding this year. So I already have its budget pretty much secured at this point, which is great. And then our second game project is a game called Incubator, and for that game we managed to get UK Games funding, and also we received funding from Northern Ireland Screen to develop the rapid prototype of the idea so we can pitch to publishers and things. So that game also is working out very well for us. I think if I were to try to start the company now, Kickstarter wouldn't be on the radar. It's a very different beast now than it was when I used it. At this point, really, it's a place where you can maybe get finishing funds for a project that you already have, pretty much in beta at that point. But certainly you're not going to fund an early idea with a very green team the way we did back in the day. That's not a thing anymore. I think leaning on your local game community is the way to do it these days. In Northern Ireland, we have Games NI, which I'm the chairperson of, which is a great industry body that connects us all together. And there's also the NI Game Dev Network. And between those two bodies, students have an awful lot of support in Northern Ireland, and I'm sure there's counterparts across the border that you guys could talk about. There's a lot of connectivity these days that we didn't have when we were starting, and I think that is your route through. Do it together on small scale projects, and it should work well for you then.
And we'll take it over to Hugh.
Yeah, I'd probably echo a lot of what Tina said, and not only because she's done it for 8 years now, but because I've seen others take a similar path. I don't know the specifics. I mean, I haven't done a ton of research because I'm not in that right now. I mean, I'm working for a studio rather than my own. But if I were to set up my own studio, I'd look up every grant under the sun. I mean, I know Ireland is really good for funding creatives recently, and actually a tax break was just introduced for the games industry in Ireland, Section 48 or something. I mean, I'm not great with the specifics, clearly. But I know that there are grants in Ireland for games and just media in general, and especially if it's to do with Irish culture, or if there's the Irish language in it, you can get a good bit of funding. Or even if you just implement the Irish language into a game, you can get a bit more of a grant. And yeah, I'd also agree with what Tina said about Kickstarter, in that it was great back in the day, but now it's definitely more of a finishing line crowdfunding thing, where you're kind of towards the end of a dev cycle and it's right, we just need an extra 6 months to get this out the door, or a year or something, because it's a lot to take on, and fulfilling the amount of Kickstarter pledges and everything is just you almost need a full-time position for that from what I've seen. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely doable, and Ireland is great for funding creatives in both sides of the border, it seems. But yeah, probably just look to summarize, a lot of grants and maybe Kickstarter at the end.
Lovely. I'll take that into account. And then finally, Emer.
I think, first of all, starting from the hypothetical game that I would like to see out there, is very much, wanting to share what I do with the general public. Because I noticed when I was on the road, I met I've literally shaken hands with tens of thousands of video game music fans across the world. And one of the things that I noticed was a huge crossover between people who play music at, you know, an amateur level or professional level all across the spectrum, and gamers. So there's a huge crossover, and I thought, God, I'd love them to feel what I feel when I'm on the podium doing, you know, doing WoW or doing Zelda or doing Metal Gear or whatever the piece is, One Winged Angel. So what I would love in the virtual space, and I had this idea ages ago, is to create a situation where people can go into the virtual space, load up their virtual concert hall, wherever it is, load up whatever piece it is, and sort of get a rudimentary kind of quick tutorial on how to make the sound and the orchestra and the visuals and everything react to you. Because, you know, to me, the idea of seeing how passionate the audience can be, that people put on, you know, I mean, the number of grown men I've seen cry at Kingdom Hearts is just unbelievable. But people putting on their VR headset and being able to inhabit that world, surrounded by the audience, surrounded by the vibes, surrounded by the visuals, everything and anything, switch to Beethoven 5, whatever it is they want. That would be exciting for me. Something that's just so, it's kind of niche and a bit random, but it could be something that I'd feel like I could share with people. The first thing I'd do from a business point of view is I would knock on the door of all my indie developer friends in Ireland, most of whom are in Galway actually, and beg their knowledge. Galway actually, and you know, Galway, Roscommon, Clare, Mayo, this area is all, a lot of it's under the auspices of the RAP Fund, which is commercial money, but they're incredibly supportive and helpful. A lot of our indie developers this side would be a part of that. The local enterprise offices in your area, that's important to see what kind of support to set up the business is there. I know Roscommon in particular is excellent. I know some animation studios that have recently moved to Roscommon. You know, look at the country as a whole and see where you can get the most support. The other thing is, of course, constantly honing your skills, constantly educating yourself. Yeah, so I would go and get people or collaborate with somebody who already knows how to do a lot of this stuff. Because again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel if you can find a great partner, you know.
Now, I just want a brief explanation to this. We don't have to go into too much detail, but considering the video game industry being so ever-changing and volatile, like evident through graphics or game engines or increasing world size capacities, how ever-changing is your specific field in the career, and what changes have you noticed the most? So I'll throw that to
I'd say zooming in on, I guess, web development and server messing for games. It kind of depends on how much stuff you're already supporting. If you're already supporting a lot of stuff, it's harder and slower to change what you have. You know, because you have to keep supporting the stuff that you already support. But if you are like doing little bits here and there, then you can kind of you can try to use a new thing on every project. So usually, if you have a new project come in for your thing, you sometimes get to say, oh, well, I see that, you know, React has this new plugin for, you know, doing websites a bit neater. I'm going to try that. And you try it out. And then if it's great, then you can kind of pitch back to your team. This is really useful for forms. It's really useful. It makes forms way easier to work with or whatever. And then you might go back and like change the other places where you use forms to use that instead. There's definitely, especially in web development, there's so much, like there's articles all the time on Medium and places like that where it's like the new library, the hot new library for doing X, Y, and Z. And like, I'd be cautious to just like pick up everything from those. Like, it's much more useful to be pretty good at like, you know, one thing from each category. Like, oh, I can do React and I can do one kind of API backend like Django or Flask or something like that. Because you could always learn another one if you need to, but it's a lot more useful to say, I could actually build something with this, this, and this, than it is to say, I know a tiny bit about 50 things. So even though it can move very quick, that can be a problem if you end up trying to pick up everything.
Well, the thing I've noticed the most is how much more seriously video game music is being taken by the public in general. I host, and I'd never have imagined this. I host a show for Classic FM in the UK of video game music, and we're going to be doing all kinds of things with that. But the number of very, very serious orchestras that take the music seriously and the audience seriously has changed. Also, the standard of composition has gotten a lot higher because as budgets get higher, you know, I mean, we used to go to the Skywalker Ranch, which was, you know, San Francisco Symphony, opera and ballet orchestras together, and it was like being the kids in the candy store. So I've seen, you know, from chip tunes all the way to now, the standard of composition has gotten really high because, you know, also people who have gone through the process of getting going through their masters and getting the internships and getting the education and the skills, you know, they're now being brought into the industry and taking it seriously. We still have some differences between film, TV, and the gaming industry that make it slightly less attractive to big name composers, you know, like your John Williams kind of level. But that has nothing to do with the quality of the games or the quality of the industry or anything like that. It has more to do with the way music is treated in the industry on a business level. But definitely standard composition and the seriousness with which, and also the emergence of video game music as its own genre as well, which is new.
Us have reached the 45-minute mark, so I think we're gonna have to start finishing up now. We've been so comprehensive, so thank you so much. I didn't think that you would take so much time into putting thought into your answers, so I'm blown away. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm so happy to have you all. Yeah, I think we're gonna leave this here. So thanks again. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you learned a lot. Thanks, Katie Foley. And I hope to talk to you later. I hope we can connect.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, it was
thanks for
lovely
having
to be
us.
here. Thanks so much for having us.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye,
Yes, thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.